All right, welcome to another edition of our Cinema Club.
Take two, right?
All right, so this week we went to an Italian film. We went to Antonioni's L'Avventura, The Adventure, from 1960, which neither of us had seen before. It's pretty interesting, very beautiful black and white photography.
Yes.
It starts out with a group of kind of the upper class, middle-aged people with, I guess they're going on kind of a trip, kind of a vacation, or maybe they just don't have anything to do. And so they're on a boat. They go out to the Aeolian Islands, which are near Sicily. They're just hanging out. They
used to be volcanoes, which is something I learned from watching the film. Yeah.
The first thing I noticed about this movie is these were people that are it was difficult to empathize with any of them. They're very kind of emotionally distant and even from each other, kind of bickering a little bit.
All around,
and just
terrible people.
Whining about things like, let's not swim here. These islands are creepy. Let's go somewhere else.
Well, that's sort of the central theme is that like people that have so much are still so unhappy, right? Like, I mean, it's they generally are good looking, almost all of them, right? I mean,
yep, they seem to have everything they need.
Yeah.
But they're just not. They seem pretty miserable. Yeah,
and I believe that's because life is just basically awful, and no matter what you have, it's all terrible, Chris.
Oh, downer. Okay, so going from here, they go to this one island. It's a very big, rocky, barren. It's like almost no vegetation.
Yeah. Looks like
just
something
a big pile of volcanic rocks, apparently.
Yeah, I don't know why this would be a destination for anybody unless you're into just jagged rocks.
I think they were just there. And,
yeah.
Yeah, and at that point, what we thought was the main character of the movie was this brunette girl named Anna. She had been the focus of the first few scenes of the movie, and she's talking to her fiance Sandro, and who's been away for a month, but the movie never tells us why. It doesn't tell us a whole lot about these characters. There's just a lot of unspoken backstory. And he's been away for a month, and she's kind of like giving him the cold shoulder, like he tries to have a conversation with her, and she's saying, I'm kind of used to being alone now, I don't know. And he's like, well, let's get married, it's cool, we'll get used to each other. It's very weird. And then she disappears. And in fact, she disappears for the rest of the movie.
Yes, just abruptly, out of nowhere.
For quite a while, they are all on the island kind of looking for her in every nook and cranny.
Which is why,
or actually, only two of the party are really that interested. The other people don't seem to really care where she's gone.
Yeah, I never noticed that. I didn't. That didn't register until you just said that, actually.
Yeah. Sandro's interested, and then Claudia, a blonde woman.
Claudia seems the most
kind of her friend, I guess.
Right, yeah.
They have some backstory, and they seem really close.
Yeah, like they change together and have tickle fights and shit. Yeah, there's one scene where they're just trying on clothes.
That was like the happiest they were when it was the two.
Yeah, so Claudia seems to be the one who cares the most, I guess.
Yeah.
She seems to be the most concerned. She cries about it. I mean, she seems genuinely upset. But the thing about this film is two very different acts put together into one film. First act is kind of sets it up to be it's going to be like a mystery, like they're looking for this thing, and it really kind of takes its time and really kind of sets it up to be like this, what could be a very intricate crime story.
I mean, it's very slowly paced and more about atmosphere and the details of the way these people are interacting, but it's almost suspenseful. It's kind of suspenseful in the beginning because
I really thought that's where it was
she
going.
disappears and you're kind of thinking,
especially
what's going on?
Because after a while, the police show up and then they're starting to like unravel clues and stuff like that.
Very odd clues.
Very strange.
It's very like, oh hey, remember when we saw that suspicious boat, which was not something that was shown in the movie.
Yeah, they don't just. Yeah.
So I guess maybe that's our first clue that that's not the real concern of the movie.
Yeah, and so an Act 2 starts, and it really is kind of like the midpoint of the movie.
Yeah.
And we know that because our Hulu stalled at almost exactly the midpoint of the movie.
I knew that was a bad idea.
Yeah, it's just
Hulu at 7 p.m.
Yeah, I swear it's never done that before. But like you were saying, I usually watch these films very late at night.
This isn't even buzz marketing because we're saying that it sucked.
Yeah, it come on. Well, actually, can you blame Hulu really, or is it my internet connection?
Who knows?
Because AT&T is awful too.
This review is going to be derailed by a series of that's going to be a further commentary on the movie. We're just going to start complaining about all these things that we have.
Yeah. There's so much other stuff I don't like, Chris. Anyway.
Right. Okay, the second half of the movie.
Second half, very different from the first.
They're still kind of looking for Anna, but in a way they kind of don't seem to care too much.
Yeah.
They're going from town to town, going into hotels and churches where she's obviously not.
I will say.
And
I was very confused as to the pacing of the second half of this film. The first half is very clear. It all takes place from, you go from point A to point B. They're on a boat. They're being European and all that shit. And they get to the island, and it very quickly like escalates, and you're jumping back and forth in time, but you're never sure like how much time is elapsing between each.
Yeah, it's just very elliptical.
Shot. It's all very whatever.
It's like establishing shots.
Yeah.
Would be boring.
Right.
So there's just none of that. It's just next scene is 3 days later, and we're just there.
Right.
Like it looks like the characters are going to go have dinner together, and then the next day, and then all of a sudden it's just only two of them, and they're in another town.
Yeah.
And they're driving.
And I will say, I'm not even sure that we're jumping in time. This could all literally be in the place of a few days.
I'm just figure it out and catch up,
because that's where that would make the most sense, is if we're jumping around in various points. I guess we should say that the second half really focuses on the relationship between Anna's fiance, Serpico or Sandro, Sandro, and Claudia.
Yeah, her friend, and then they kind of form like a little affair. Yeah,
so they hook up, and then it starts to follow them around, and then like kind of halfway through that story, like Julia shows up and then starts porking this art guy.
Yeah,
right.
They kind of.
I don't get why she showed back up halfway through that.
And then the other lady too. So like they kind of meet back up with the other people who have gone on with their lives. They don't really care what happened to Anna.
I think that's centrally the point, is that people disappear, and
I think those two subplots where they meet up with their fellow passengers again, they're showing how they're not happy. It's like all these people are just not happy and not able to form emotional relationships.
Yeah,
with
like
people.
I'm not just unhappy when we're together. I'm unhappy just.
It's all like too. Physical. Like did you notice the one? What was the name of the other? Julia.
Yeah, spelled.
No wait, Julia was the younger one.
Julia was the one with the art guy.
Patrizia, is she the older lady?
The one that hates everything.
Yeah. Like I kind of thought she was like older than like.
I got that impression.
There was like. And she was with this guy on the thing, and I started to like get the assumption that he was more like a younger boy toy, and then later there's another scene with her, and she's like, "Oh, you haven't met my husband," so that kind of. Yeah. They don't tell you that at the beginning of the movie.
No.
I assumed at first that this man she was with, and not even happily with, like.
Right.
She would just like
he would
give her the bed eyes, and she'd be like, "Well, just look at my legs, and that's enough."
Yeah. She kind of hates everything.
Yeah. These are just miserable.
Like at the beginning when they're on the way to the islands, and she's like, islands. What is that? Just you got water all around them? What's that all about? Or something like that. Something to that effect.
Oh yeah.
At the beginning when she's like,
terrible.
Yeah, she's just like she's in the hold of the ship. Is that right?
Oh, she hates the islands because they remind her of her. They're lonely.
Yeah, they're all like isolated and just pointy,
miserable.
Jagged.
These people are miserable.
Yeah, they're just awful, horrible, miserable people. Which you think I would identify with, but I just couldn't cohesively. Like the story was all over the place.
But visually very stunning. I think.
Yeah.
I've only seen a couple of Antonioni's movies before, but one thing about him is the placement of the camera, and the actors are always moving around, and just they're very well defined shots.
Yeah.
Where they start out in one part of the frame, and it's a very beautiful framing with people just where they should be, and then they'll move, and the camera will follow them in a very fluid shot, a long shot, and then they'll end up in another very interesting position at the end.
Yeah, visually the movie is very captivating. It's just the look of it and the production value of it is great. You're in exotic European settings, or exotic for me. But the thing is, I just never really cared that much about what was happening on the screen. It's like everything looked great. But at the end of the day, nobody was really saying anything of any substance, or it wasn't contributing to any kind of story that I could make sense. I didn't care about any of these characters. Maybe that's the point.
Even their dialogue was very detached from any kind of reality. They were just very banal things that they would talk about. And
it was
without a whole lot of context for the audience.
Yeah, it almost like the audience wasn't even a factor. It was just like, this is just, these people are completely isolated, even from you who are watching this. Like it's.
Well, one thing that I thought was interesting, I didn't do any research into this movie before we watched it, so I didn't know what to expect.
Yeah.
I kind of had an idea that this would kind of be what this movie was like. It's definitely like an art house. Like, you have to think.
Oh yeah.
Because you have to kind of try to piece together what's going on. It's not straightforward drama of any kind. There's not a lot of plot or drama or character development. It's a lot of atmosphere and interactions between just the two people usually. I did look around. This is from 1960, which it seems ahead of its time, I think.
No,
when you think about a lot of people always talk about, this is right around the same time that what we consider the French New Wave was starting. It's really easy to then just only study the New Wave in context with just the other French films, but at this point, with all the Cannes Film Festival in Berlin and Venice, there was already a global art film festival circuit going on. Japanese films were already coming in, and Bergman from Sweden. So that it wasn't just it wasn't a bubble, the French New Wave. There were these influences, and this was a very forward-thinking new language of film, but completely different from what the French were doing.
I don't know why I thought this was a French film at first. Maybe it was the L apostrophe.
Well, in a way, if you were to kind of describe how some of these scenes played out, you would kind of be like, oh, that scene's kind of artsy French New Wave.
Yeah.
So in a way, this is kind of interesting, predecessor too. It probably had an impact on the French filmmakers.
Yeah, definitely.
And they're the stereotypically angsty French art films.
Yeah, definitely. So, just real quick, there's a little side list of other notable films that came out the same year, and so it came out with Godard's Breathless, which is considered
his first film.
His entry. So La Dolce Vita came out in 1960. So it's got it's around that time where it was definitely on the verge of something, a change in cinema.
Not a real. Another interesting context to look at it in is just Italian cinema itself. after World War II, and Italy was in a big depression, and all of their movies around that time, that at least that we know of, that are representative of the great directors of those years, were always about the lower class, and about the troubles that they were in. And this seems to be like the first one that I've ever seen, the earliest that would have been about rich people and their problems.
Yeah, definitely. But like about their non-problems,
right?
Really. Like, because there's never anything that
it's all like in their head.
Yeah, which maybe like is like like that misery kind of transcends class and status and shit. It's all. At
least in all of the like the melodramas and stuff, like at least those people like knew how to love. Like they're the Italian. They enjoyed what they had. In between anyway, the misery, like. Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's gonna take like a while to process.
Right. When they screened it at the Cannes Film Festival, everybody booed and hated it.
Yes.
But then the jury awarded it a special prize for bringing in new language of cinema and for the beauty of its photography. I think were the two things that they cited.
Granted, that language was unintelligible nonsense, but a new language nonetheless. Yeah, so that the idea that like an audience can completely hate it, but that a select group of whoever the jury was comprised of that year thought to honor it with I don't think it won anything. It was just a jury selection, right? Like I don't think it actually.
I think it was a special jury prize.
Yeah, or something.
They give away some of those, like one or two.
You're right. It's like Bon Jovi has a doctorate from whatever university, like
honorary.
Yeah, like it's not like but yeah, I can see that. I can see where it's important in what it's saying. I don't know that I'm ready to.
It was a tough one.
It is. It's definitely going to warrant maybe another viewing down the road somewhere.
Yeah, to kind of go back and like knowing what at the end of the movie, like maybe being able to follow certain things.
Yeah. Well, just like there's never any sort of resolution for like their initial.
Yeah, we both thought. What's the dude's name again? Serpico. We kept thinking that he was gonna just disappear at the end too, and then it would just be the Claudia.
Yeah, Sandro is his name.
Sandro. I can't remember that name.
Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah. The hope like he would be. There was a couple of hypotheses that I had. One is that they were all dead, and Anna never existed. Was another one. I don't know. I was.
Yeah, you were taking it too far with the symbolism. And
I always expect shit.
We watched it after our first two movies were very surrealistic, so it was.
Yeah.
It was too hard to resist, like trying to place it in that context.
You always want to like try to find like, like a deeper meaning and stuff, which is why really next week Kangaroo Jack is going to be our selection. If we can just have a good time.
He's kidding. I'm not watching it.
If Criterion put it out, though, would you?
Yeah, they always talk about, having selections in all these different genres, because they did Armageddon.
Yeah, they did Armageddon and stuff. But what if, like, just as a joke, Criterion was just like, you know what? The rights to this are pretty cheap. Like, fuck it. Like, let's just put out Kangaroo Jack.
Only the very best worst make it into Criterion.
Yeah, and they just put that like a random, or they did like Juana Man or something. Like, just a random title. Because it's Criterion, like art nerds like us would have to be like, oh, well, I never realized this film was, and then, like, maybe, like,
just
a year later.
Everybody watch it.
Yeah, and then, like, a year later, Criterion could be like, we were just fucking around. Like, we just wanted to see how dumb you guys all sounded. I think it'd be funny. It would piss a lot of people off, I'm sure. But, it would be funny.
Okay, so we didn't exactly have the greatest experience with La Ventura, but you can come to cinemapantheon.org and tell us what we missed. Help set us straight. We know that it's a great movie, but it's just not connecting to us. And Lewis is saying no. And So next week we're going to watch Jim Jarmusch's Mystery Train from 1989. And so that should be pretty good. Change of pace. And you can also follow us on Twitter and find out when it comes out at Pantheon Pod.